Mind being warm. Let's get close together. Folks, I've seen some folks walk away. They've driven off, and I understand that. I understand it's cold, but if we, for just one moment, would realize there are people fighting all over the world right now, and maybe they should be home right now, but the bottom line is they're in elements that they can't control. Whether it's hot, whether it's cold, whether the history of our wars, whether the history of our soldiers being in cold, being in hot, being in all those things, being out there fighting for us, and the least we can do is stand in the field and talk about those things we should be doing. Folks, if we can't stand for 3 hours, how can we battle a war with the federal government? So I ask you today, just for a few moments, I ask you to go back with me and think with me. I want you to think about what you were doing just a few months ago before the tragedy or the things that happened in the Northeast happened. You were sitting and you were in your lounge chair, or you were in your recliner, you were in your home, you were enjoying your children, you were enjoying your grandchildren, you were enjoying all of those things. You were sitting enjoying your life as normal. You were thinking about maybe the next football season. You were, by the way, I'm depressed that football is over. But you were thinking about the next football season, you were thinking about all those things, and all of a sudden you realized that something was coming over the horizon. I'll give you an example. I live just a few miles over the hill over here. I bought my grandfather's land. And we would sit out on the front porch. What we would do, actually, before we would do that, we would go out in the garden and we'd pick 5-gallon bucketfuls of butter beans, and we'd sit on the front porch and we'd begin to shell those butter beans. We had little pails, and we'd be listening to George Strait talk about, they called him a fireman. We listen to that, and we shell those butter beans, but then all of a sudden, my grandpa was always looking at the weather, always watching the weather, because he'd look over the hill and he'd see dark clouds starting to come. He'd look over at me and he'd say, "There's a storm a-coming." That was his favorite thing to say, "There's a storm a-coming." Folks, I don't think we realize just what it is we're facing. We look at the television, and one will say, "We're not trying to take your guns. We're not trying to take your weapons. We're not trying to do those things." And incrementally, they're doing the exact same thing, just as Ray said, and many others say across this nation on this very day. They're doing it incrementally. It's incremental aggression. They'll take a little bit at a time, folks. Day after day and time after time, law after law, they will take it away from us, and they have no problem doing it. Guns are good for hunting. But Thomas Jefferson wasn't thinking about hunting. Thomas Jefferson wasn't thinking about hunting at all when he decided, when he fought, and he fought hard to get this put in our Constitution. When he puts that into the Constitution, he realizes, listen, Thomas Jefferson and Orion Christopher paraphrase. He says every 20 to 30 years the people ought to rise up against that government just to prove who's boss. But you see, we've become complacent. We've become complacent. We've looked around our nation and we've said it to everyone. There goes every one of my notes. We've become complacent. We've looked at those things and we've said, I can go and I can be at my job. I can go and work at my job day after day, time after time. I can go and just do regular things. I can go home to my children. I can go out in the garden. I can go hunting and I can go fishing. But friends, here's the problem. We are up against a federal government that is out to take these things away simply for one reason. And that one reason is power. There are periods of time in American history that define us. There are periods of time in American history that define us, and right now is that opportunity for you to realize that when they do come for your guns. Now here's the thing, folks, I want you to understand something. When they come for your guns, it's probably not going to be knocking on your door. We say, if they come to my door, I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to fight. I'll do whatever I have to do, and they better know that there's going to be a gun pointed at their head, and we all get excited and we all cheer, and that's all wonderful. But friends, that's probably not the way it's going to happen. The way it's probably going to happen is this. The people in your state government who should stand up, the people in your state government who should be fighting, the people in your state government who should tell the federal government to get lost, they're going to have a chance to say, federal government, we're not going to allow you to take their guns. And the federal government then says, fine, you won't allow us to do that, then okay, the penalty is this. We won't send you any money. You see, friends, this battle we're up against is all fine. We come out here and but this dollar bill, friends, I'm telling you, whether it's a U.S. congressman or a U.S. senator or anything else, it's very, very powerful, friends. And when we say we'll stand up, and we say we'll fight, and we say we'll be out there and we'll keep them from taking our guns, understand something, they're far more cunning than that. They're far more cunning. There's no group of people other than in a disaster area that are going to come slamming on your door trying to bust in. It happens sometimes, I understand. What they'll do is they'll say, fine, if you don't, then we'll do this. We'll take away this money. We'll take away that money. We've become so dependent. Rather than being free, rather than being independent, we've decided to suckle the bottle of the government. And all of us at some point we decide, well, I guess it's better than not having anything. And so we want security in our homes, and we want security in our money, and we want security in all those things. When the founding fathers never had that security. They never had that security. They realized, I want you, just bear with me. I spoke to a group just a couple of weeks ago. This may be redundant for them, but listen to me carefully. I want you to think about where you're standing on the grass that's here. I want you to think about across this nation and its history. I want you to think about how much blood has been shed on American soil. On American soil, in the frigid weather of Virginia, or whether it's the hot area of the South, it's been fought, friends, and it's been fought for ages and ages gone by. And every time we have an opportunity to go out and do something about this, we're most of the time apathetic. We're most of the time saying, you know what, somebody else can handle it. Look at this crowd. Listen, you may be angry with me, but I'm telling you, there ought to be thousands. There ought to be thousands, but the apathy in this world, the apathy in this nation has decided, fine, whatever they do, they're going to do. We keep electing the same people. We keep electing the same people time after time. And we say to ourselves, we absolutely want something different, but every time we put the same type of people. Now we are called radicals. Now we are called radicals. We're called radicals because we use the word Constitution. We're called radicals because occasionally we get a little excited and we say, we the people. We're called radicals by the Republican Party. Friends, listen, it's wonderful to be a part of a party, but understand, even the Republican Party is turning on gun-toting people and saying, fine, Brian, what you don't understand is you're going a little overboard. All we're going to do is we're going to enact legislation that kind of, just a little registration legislation. And then we're going to do something with the ammunition, and we're going to begin to, ID your ammunition, and then we're going to do this and this. It's the same thing that was said in Nazi Germany, just as you heard Ray say earlier. The same thing done. When they take that ammunition, and then they take these, and they say, this is all for your safety. This is for your safety that we're doing this. When in fact what it is they don't want the American people to stand up and protect themselves. Because when you have guns, you can protect yourself. When they take them away, they can do whatever they please, whenever they please. And these people here understand that. But we're living in apathy. Time and time again we find ourselves living in apathy, but we're also living in fear. Friends, let me tell you something. 535 people in Washington are running 300 million people. We say to ourselves, we're afraid, and we argue and complain, and we look at the television, we point at it, we can't believe this person did this, or that person did that, and we're staring at it, we don't understand why we keep putting up with it. 535 people are telling you that they don't have to live by the same laws you live by. And then when it comes to guns, they say this, they say, you can't carry a gun, but we're going to carry guns. We won't have to be under Obamacare, but you'll have to be under Obamacare. They say this over and over again, that they do not have to live by the same laws you live by, and they can do it because we do nothing. They can do it because we are not active, that we don't take action once we leave this particular place. We're fearful. Americans are fearful, but I will tell you this. If we go back in time just a little while, and we go to the old Soviet Union, and by the way, they're beginning to build back up, if you didn't know that. But the old Soviet Union, there was a reporter that went over there, and he was interviewing a professor. And they were walking around with one another. And the people from Moscow would just stare at this reporter. And he got kind of uncomfortable. He was watching, he got kind of uncomfortable. He was watching and said, why in the world, what is it about me? I mean, is it something I'm wearing? Is it something, what's going on? The professor looked at him and he said this. He said, every time an American comes here, they stare. Because an American never shows fear. You see, here was a Moscow under communism. The direction that we're moving across this nation, here was Moscow under communism. Everyone walked around in fear, afraid this would be taken or that would be taken, or that line would be too long and they couldn't get inside and get food, or they couldn't get medical care, or they couldn't get these things that had been promised to them by communism. They said there's something about Americans, they don't show fear. But you see, just 30 years later, just 25, 30 years later, people are walking around. They're saying, you know what, we'll give up a little bit of our liberty if you'll just secure us in housing. And we'll give up a little bit of our liberty if you'll just secure us in this area, in our food, if you'll just make sure we have food, and we give up more and more. And now we say it's perfectly okay. There were no marches on Washington when they decided it was okay to come and arrest an American citizen without due process. There were no marches on Washington. You know what I did? I went out, I talked to my wife about it in the living room. I talked to a couple of tea parties about it. I would send emails and that kind of thing. But you know, friends, that was never enough. There were no huge marches up there saying, you will not arrest an American citizen without due process. There was none of that. Friends, listen, the legislation is happening, and guess how they're doing it? They're doing it through your state government. You see, they're also smart enough to know that there are states across the nation, just like they're destroying marriage right now, states across America. Now we have an opportunity. We're sitting there realizing that they are destroying our right to own guns, the Second Amendment, by educating young children that it's wrong, by going into your state education system, by going into the federal system of Common Core standards and working through that. And now, friends, there are states across the nation that are enacting laws far worse than this. Far, far worse than this. Registration for firearms is light compared to what California and Colorado and other places are doing right now to your gun rights. So what do we do? You say, Brian, well, what happens now? The question is, what will you do? Let me ask you this. You say, yeah, Brian, I'm ready. When they come to my door, I'm ready. Are we? You see, friends, no one wants a bloody revolution. No one's calling for that. But here's the problem, friends. You've got to understand, there comes a point where the federal government will take too much. And when they take too much, what will we do? You say, Ryan, I'm ready. I promise you. We've got ways. You're probably one of those that has your canisters underground. You've got everything ready. You're sitting there waiting at the door, friends. But what will happen when that comes across? What will happen when they finally have broken that last straw? What will happen? Will you indeed protect yourself and protect your family? Because, friends, here's what's going to happen. When that does happen, it's going to break loose. We say to ourselves, why isn't the American government buying up so much ammunition? Why is it? And look, I don't even have to sound like a conspiracy theorist, friends. Here's the problem with that. This is actually happening. Your federal government buying up ammunition like they've never bought before, setting up tanks and different artillery in different areas of the country, getting ready, and now they're going to ask our very own generals a question: could you and would you fire on an American citizen if they would not lay down their arms? And the only way that they can come in and become a general, friends, is if they answer yes.